I first discovered Thomas Sowell while researching my 2020 book on the ideas of Jordan Peterson. The more I study Sowell, the more I find that he underpromises and overdelivers. Indeed, part of what makes his massive output so impressive is its relevance. Society's upper echelons have become echo chambers filled with aloof snobs who take ordinary people for fools. We were told to stand 6 feet apart, when no actual research backed that made-up measure. We were told certain movements were peaceful, while cars and buildings were burning. We were told that certain people were mentally sharp, when clearly they weren't. We were, in short, fooled. In this video series, I want to explore the ways proposed by Sowell to fix this. Things urgently need fixing because, as my opening examples show, many academics, politicians, and journalists use feelings and pure opinions as their compass. Those in charge have no trouble ridiculing flat earthers, yet they believe that some men can have babies. Letting civilization rest on La La Land will not end well. Sowell's work thus aims to replace reliance on expertise with an appeal to facts. Intellectuals naturally want to hold on to their power. So, in books like Intellectuals and Society and Vision of the Anointed, Sowell catalogs the various strategies used by ruling elites to evade facts. All statements are true if you're free to redefine their terms. Any statistics can be extrapolated to the point where they show disaster. A sample A can always exceed B if not all of B is counted, and or if A is exaggerated. Every policy is a success by sufficiently low standards, and a failure by sufficiently high standards. Most variables can show either an upward trend or a downward trend, depending on the base year chosen. Improbable events are commonplace in a country with more than 250 million people. Such dishonesty and wishful thinking may not bother those who pay no price for their effects, but no civilization can survive for long the erosion of trust that they engender. Sowell's timely critiques thus lead many to regard him as America's greatest contemporary living philosopher. A philosophy isn't a personal opinion where anything goes. Rather, a philosophy is a systematic answer to 3 fundamental questions. What exists? How do I know it? What should I do? The technical names for these branches of philosophy are metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. Importantly, these domains of inquiry aren't next to each other by conjunction, this and this and this. Rather, they are nested inside one another by subsumption. This presupposes this presupposes this. So, anyone seeking to answer the main question of political philosophy, how should society be organized, must invariably help themselves to a correct or incorrect picture of reality, knowledge, and morality. Thinkers serious about grounding political claims must therefore make their underlying assumptions explicit so as to defend those assumptions. That is exactly what Sowell does. Here's a high-altitude survey of Sowell's philosophy. Sowell grounds his metaphysics on facts. Quote, "For many people, tested knowledge is nothing more than socially constructed beliefs. This disparagement of facts is part of the more general tendency to treat reality as plastic. We know that creatures with sonar-like perception systems, such as bats, must construct their picture of the world from different raw materials of the senses. But does any of this mean that what we see is merely a set of conventions? All these creatures' worlds, like our own, are indeed perceptions, but they are not just perceptions. That is why bats swerve to avoid colliding with a stone wall." Sowell grounds his epistemology on pervasive ignorance. Quote, "Even a so-called knowledgeable person usually has solid knowledge only within some special area, representing a tiny fraction of the whole spectrum of human concerns. As humorist Will Rogers said, everybody is ignorant, only on different subjects. However, a PhD is never considered ignorant, however barren his mind might be outside his narrow specialty. Considering the enormous range of human knowledge, it is remarkable that one speck in this firmament should be the sole determinant of whether someone is considered knowledgeable or ignorant in general. Because what is meant by knowing varies enormously, it is by no means clear that there is more knowledge among intellectuals as compared to the less educated members of the same society. Sowell grounds his ethics on scarcity. Quote, "Unlike God at the dawn of creation, we cannot simply say, 'Let there be equality,' or 'Let there be justice.' We must begin with the universe that we were born into and weigh the cost of making any specific change in it to achieve a specific end. We cannot simply do something whenever we're morally indignant, while disdaining to consider the costs entailed." The most important realization you're left with is not that Sowell possesses the final word on every subject, but that he wields profound insights and reams of data and comparative research into many of the very debates that still consume us. It leaves you with a nagging question. Why haven't you or anyone you know ever so much as acknowledged the existence of his output? Sowell's ideas are not taught because they undermine those who see themselves as heroically guiding the masses to some social justice utopia. Yet, as more people independently discover Sowell, he is gradually taking his place in the canon of Western thought. YouTube lets viewers leave their mark, so if enough people show interest, I plan on making more educational videos on Sowell's philosophy. Here, to start things off, I want to explore Sowell's answer to the epistemological question, how do I know it? One common answer is, because the experts say so. Yet, as Sowell points out, the status of expert is conferred in a circular manner. You are an expert when other experts consider you an expert. Is this self-policing a good or a bad thing? It can certainly foster corruption and conceit. As Sowell says, intellectuals often act as if they've just come from interviewing God, and this is what he told them. Rightly recoiling from this, many people will reason as follows. Premise 1, so-and-so is expelled from the circle of experts. Premise 2, experts care more about power than truth. Therefore, conclusion 3, so-and-so cares more about truth than power. Take the case of Dr. Judy Mikovits. In the documentary Plandemic, this American virologist is portrayed as trustworthy precisely because she's been shunned by her scientific peers. Once you've been massively lied to, a calm return to blind trust is no longer possible. Yet, even if such distrust of the establishment is understandable, giving pariahs a blank check is flawed, or at any rate inconclusive. What, for example, would you think if someone told you the following? There is a jelly bean outside the jar. All the jelly beans in the jar are red. Therefore, the jelly bean outside the jar cannot be red. Just as nothing prevents the jelly bean outside the jar from being red, nothing prevents a person ousted by power-hungry liars from also being a power-hungry liar. As a result, the most we can say about Dr. Mikovits or anybody else is, so-and-so might care more about truth than power. But of course, this holds for anyone. By the same token, if you take my YouTube course on C.S. Peirce, you'll learn that acquiring expertise lets no human escape the possibility of error. Hence, for all we know, the person who is at odds with others may see the world better than all the rest. Since conformity and dissent are unreliable proxies, we confront 4 possibilities. Said by an expert and is true, said by an expert and is false, said by a non-expert and is true, said by a non-expert and is false. Facts, as we saw, are a cornerstone of Sowell's philosophy. This is because, for every expert there is an equal and opposite expert, but for every fact there is not necessarily an equal and opposite fact. Since facts are independent of social status, we may formulate the following definition. A fact is whatever would let us find out which quadrant we are in. We must be mindful, however, that facts do not speak for themselves. They speak for or against competing theories. It is thus crucial, Sowell argues, to make testable hypotheses and build institutions that incentivize feedback from reality. I'd love to make another video that picks up where this one left off, so click subscribe to know when it's ready.